First order of business is the Blockbuster trade between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Dallas Mavericks. The Lakers received Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris, and the Mavericks received Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and the 2029 first round pick from the Lakers. And then the Jazz received Jalen Hood-Schifino, the LA Clippers 2025 second round pick, and the Mavericks 2025 second round pick as well. This trade came in, I want to say around like 1 a.m. last night, just right after midnight. I don't know about y'all, but I had like 3 separate group chats that were just going crazy, and lots of stuff going on. So just raw reactions. Where were you when you heard about the trade? How did you hear about the trade? Let me hear it.
Yeah, so I don't even know what I was doing, honestly. I think I was probably just gaming or something. But yeah, I just opened Twitter. Actually, I think I saw it on ESPN first, because I didn't see the original Shams tweet. I saw like a ESPN, I guess, confirming it or something, because he works for them now. And like another Discord I was in, I posted in there, and people started going crazy over it. The main thing I saw, because then once I saw it, I think ESPN on YouTube, I went to Twitter, and then like trending was #hacked, because then everyone was wondering. It was like before even getting to the trade, everyone was like, surely Shams or Shams, I don't know how to pronounce it, but he was hacked, because no one believed that a trade this. We'll get to opinions on it, I guess, but a trade of this magnitude could be real. So me myself, I was like started digging. At first I was like, okay, this is just the trade, it is what it is. But everyone's saying hacked. I was like, was he hacked? So I started digging myself. I was like, I need some verification. But then I think maybe like an hour later, he went up on Sports Center or something on ESPN, and it was actually talking on video. So people were like, okay, we can't deny this anymore.
Yeah. Honestly, I was one of the people who was so convinced that Shams had been hacked. I was literally just scrolling. I was just scrolling on my phone. I think I was like procrastinating. Like I wanted to do something. Like I was in the process of like mentally preparing to like do something productive, and then just caught myself scrolling, and yeah, like 3 group chats started blowing up, and man, I really thought Shams had been hacked. I was so confused. I did not know what to think. I honestly, like, and maybe people will think I'm exaggerating, my heart sank. Like, my heart literally sank as if something tragic had taken place. Like, I don't know why I had that reaction, but I think I was just in such shock. And it had already been such a roller coaster of a night. We'll get to the Royal Rumble later in this recording, but just did not understand what had been happening, what was going on, really. Like, did not understand what was going on. So I was definitely one of those people who was convinced that it was fake. How about you, Alexi? How'd you hear about the news?
Yeah, man, I was taking my morning dump, opening Twitter as usual, as you do. And I saw it there. I flinched a little on that seat. I was shocked in the moment. I mean, I wasn't expecting a trade like that, because even being like kind of outside of basketball, just getting into it, these are 2 massive names. And for something like that to happen in the middle of the season, and seemingly without the knowledge of either the players too, it's just so bizarre. Because I mean, as we know in soccer, like, the players are pretty heavily involved on whether they get loaned out and like their intentions and where they want to go. And this just seemed like a surprise to everyone, in that like the trade was only like agreed upon by like the highest parties. So yeah, I was on that seat for an extra few minutes processing.
Yeah. It's been a while. I think we're living. Well, one, it's been a while since the Lakers have made any substantial move. So I think that was, at least for me, a big part of the shock to begin with. Obviously, the trade within itself, you read the headline, Luka for AD, and that's already mind blowing. But just seeing that the Lakers had made a substantial move, I think completely took me by surprise. But yeah, I totally get you on that, and it's good to see that just my entire Instagram feed was just full of reactions, full of shock. I had a couple of Laker fans in my feed celebrating and just being so happy and over the top. But now that we've spoken on our raw reactions, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the trade. So, Dre, let me hear. What are you thinking?
The Lakers always have it nice, don't they? Like they just, I mean, maybe it's just something about being in LA. Not something. It's a great place to live apparently, but well, actually, I don't know recently, but that franchise, well, realistic things have been happening in the world where it's not necessarily the best place to live.
I have a great time editing this podcast.
Yeah, but that franchise just generally has it super nice. I know LA is just a very generally an attractive destination. Even though this isn't necessarily the case for this trade because this happened without the players knowing, but just throughout their history, most of the massive names in the NBA, in the history of the NBA, have at one point or another made a stop in LA. And recently, it looked like, post Kobe's time there, they're on a bit of a downward trend. Then all of a sudden, they get the next biggest player in the game, LeBron James. Even then, they get their Mickey Mouse ring. He brings in AD, his running mate. And after the Mickey Mouse ring, we're like, okay, doesn't look like they're going anywhere though. LeBron's just gonna ride it out, see if he can get Bronny in through nepotism, and then we're just gonna ride it out for the next 2 years until he retires. They're probably not gonna contend again, but he's in LA. He has his podcast and his all his movie stuff and production company. It works out for his family. His family set up out there. But now, even though the Lakers seemed like they were going nowhere, they all of a sudden get potentially the next best player for the next 10 years in the NBA, Luka Doncic. Obviously, you could say you can throw out SGA's balling all the time, whatever. Tatum, people of that around the same age who are also on that like MVP candidate level. But to me, anyway, Luka is the most talented of those. I'm not saying he's the best all-around player because we know he can't defend necessarily. And clearly, this is not a win now move for LA because Luka and LeBron, as dope as their playstyles are, and as similar as they are in some ways, they aren't necessarily actually the best fit in terms of playing together. It'll be fun for sure, but it doesn't even matter because the Lakers already weren't in win now mode. So the fact that they got Luka and that doesn't help them get to win now mode, they don't care. This year, next year, it doesn't matter. Obviously, a lot of money is going to be made, but this is for the next 7-10 years. Now they have the potential best player in the league over that time, and then they can build around him, and they get rid of AD, who was 32, injury prone. I know he's been a bit better recently, but generally over his career, super injury prone, and give him to the Mavericks, who they're in win now mode, but it's not even guaranteed they get back to the finals. So if they don't win something in the next 2 years with Kyrie and AD and Clay and whoever else, that's an even worse move on their end. Like, this is potentially the worst move by a franchise in NBA history. It's going to be up there if they don't win something. They have to win in the next year or two because they basically just gave away one of the biggest, not only like on the court gems, but like marketing gems for this league in terms of how global it's going. Luka is next up in terms of those kind of, he's super likable around the league, even not just in Dallas. And giving him to the number one marketable franchise, I know Adam Silver is, well, I was about to say something crazy. Let's just say this dude's frothing at the mouth. I'll just put it like that. I know this dude is gassed. He was like, LeBron's going in 2 years. What are we going to do? The league's done for. No one cares about Katie and Steph anymore. And all of a sudden, he brings in Luka to LA, match made in heaven. The jersey sales, the marketing, everything going to the roof. I have so much more to say, but I'll let y'all talk about this too, but this is just crazy.
It does seem, again, from like a casual perspective, I agree. Like, it seems very bizarre from the Mavs end of like, this was a star player you had who even like casuals like know of and like hear about, and just giving him to one of the biggest franchises for a player. How old is Anthony Davis? How old is he? Do we know?
I believe 32.
Yeah,
I
like at 32, like you're still good, but it's like you're also, that's a mature age for your career, is it not?
It's very. That's like, okay. It looks like he's turning 32 in March, but let's say 32 for the sake of it. That's like approaching the end of your prime.
Yeah, yeah. So this seems like in soccer when those Saudi teams like try to get like 40-year-old like amazing players like Ronaldo to come over, and it's like it's not like they're going to be that effective anymore or for that long. So yeah, it's strange to me in that regard. Great for the Lakers though. 100% great for the Lakers.
Yeah, it's wild. And I was trying to, now that you bring up soccer, like I was trying to all day, once I knew we were recording this, trying to come up with a comparison, and there's almost nothing like it in soccer.
Yeah. There is for one way, but not in giving a player like Luka.
Yeah, because the sports, like, because one player can make so much more of a difference in basketball than soccer. So even if like you give up something of this level in soccer, it's not necessarily gonna have, like, it can still have a great impact, but like just out of percentages, like 1 out of 5 versus 1 out of 11, it's not gonna have as much of an impact in theory. So something like this, like I was thinking like maybe giving up like Van Dyke for Mbappe or something, or like maybe KDB, who's like injury prone but really good, but toward the end of his prime, for like a Vinny or something like that. Like, those are like the closest I can come up with. But even, or maybe I saw people saying online this is like giving up, like Barca giving up Neymar for 40 million instead of 200 million, which is like crazy undervalue. Like something like that.
Or giving Lamine.
Yeah, Lamine for for some stupid low price. Like,
Yeah.
just you almost never see something like this.
Yeah. Insane.
Yeah. It's just wild to me because I know for a fact there is a better market for Luka out there. Like, Luka, I think, you guys hit the nail on the head. He's a superstar and he's young. He's going to be 26 at the end of this month. So he is, like Dre said, on his way to being one of, if not the best player in the league for the next 10 years. So to see him go for a pick, AD, and Max Christie, who I want to touch on this. Like, Max Christie, for those who may not know, is super young. He's, I believe, 22 years old. So he's a young kid. He's 21. He's been hooping. Made his way into the starting rotation for the Lakers in a season where they're still trying to figure stuff out. And so to see a young prospect go out that I thought LA was going to be so high on and was going to build on in the future, just have him go along with AD, who brought you a championship, along with a very valuable, we'll see how valuable that pick is, but right now, as of right now, the direction in which the Lakers franchise seemed to have been headed in prior to the trade, that first round pick in 2029 seems super, super valuable. So the Lakers also gave up a ton. Like, let's be clear, like, I want to make sure that's clear. Luka, great player. I think he still was received, was bought into the Lakers. That is definitely a bargain. But AD, Max Christie, and what may or may not be a very valuable first round pick, that's worth mentioning. But I will say, like Dre said, this is a very short-term move by the Mavericks. I honestly am not mad at it, man. Like, you see how literally at the time of this recording, There's also news of the De'Aaron Fox trade to San Antonio. So De'Aaron Fox is on his way to team up with Wemby, and so that team, that San Antonio team, looks like it's going to be here to stay, and it's going to be a competing team, competitive team, however you want to put it, over the next few years. So, you know, I see the fear in like, hey, like we have a young stud, Wemby, taking over. Jokic is still in the Western Conference. I know the Nuggets aren't doing too hot right now, but I think, you know, they're a big trade away from being right back into the conversation. The Thunder is super deep, but they're also very young and inexperienced. So I see the logic and like, hey, let's go all in right now. Let's get AD. Let's pair him with Kyrie. We have a deep team. You have a young you receive a young talent back with Christie and a pick, you know, just in case. We'll hold on to that as well. So I see the logic with the Mavericks. I don't want to categorize this as a bad trade with them, but I do want to be clear. Like, when the more I thought about this, the more I thought back, because I think we're all thinking, like, when was the last time we saw a trade of this caliber get pulled off? Or is this the most surprising trade in NBA history? It definitely is within my lifetime. Only thing I had to compare it to was that Paul George Kawhi move to the Clippers back in, what was that, 2019, and that was also late at night. That was at like 2 a.m. But the difference is that, well, you know, we don't have to get into it too crazy, but there were murmurs of Kawhi wanting to be in LA. It was very clear he wanted to be on the Clippers, so that wasn't too much of a surprise. The fact that this just came out of nowhere and that this came in the way it did, just AD hadn't known about it, Luka wasn't notified about it, LeBron wasn't notified, JJ Redick was notified at the same time as Anthony Davis was. Like, everything about this just screams soap opera. But what I I feel like I just went on a tangent, but what I wanted to get to is that the reason why I compare it to that Clippers trade is because you look back in hindsight to what the Clippers received and what they gave up. OKC is on a tear. Like, OKC is on their way potentially being a dynasty. They have Chet Holmgren, they have SGA, they have so much talent, and I think, you know, they clearly won that trade in hindsight. With the Mavericks, if they don't win, like Dre said, this is going to be such an embarrassing move on their part. But in my head, I also see it as like, hey, we can contend for a few more years. Let's go all in right now. So I'm not really mad at that.
I'm mad at it. I do see where you're coming from. I do actually think, like, it isn't favorable from the sense that, like, they were in the finals last year. They see a window. They're trying to strike. But for me, that's like, it's just not worth it. If you, like, you can't guarantee, the West is so volatile, and you getting to the finals last year with Luka, obviously, as your number one guy. Now you're getting rid of that. You're bringing in, for me, if AD was like a guaranteed, you know for sure he's going to be healthy throughout the rest of the season and into the playoffs, it makes more sense. But you already have Kyrie, who isn't necessarily the most durable player out there. You bring in AD, who was nicknamed Street Clothes because this dude was always showing up in whatever drip he could find because he could barely play. And you're getting rid of Luka. Obviously, the rumors or whatever is that the Mavericks weren't happy with Luka's conditioning, and they're the one who approached LA. But to me, that makes it even worse. I think if Luka wants crazy, like, I think if Luka wants out, it's different. Then you're like, okay, what can we get back? Getting back AD, Christie, a first round pick. We got something for giving up our franchise player. Okay, we made the best out of a terrible situation. But you guys saying, Luka, we're not really happy with where this is going. If this is true, I don't remember if this is confirmed or not. But if we're not happy with where this is going, we're gonna get rid of Luka. Let's approach the biggest and most successful franchise in the history of the league. You could say Celtics, whatever. I'm talking about the modern NBA before it was just farmers. The Lakers. we're gonna approach them and give them the next big superstar. Well, already a superstar, but like as all these other superstars are aging out, potential number one superstar in the league to the Lakers, who are also in the Western Conference, giving it to them. Obviously, they're not competing over the next 2 years necessarily, but for me, you can work on a player who has bad conditioning. He's 25, turning 26. Like, that's on your franchise if you can't get Luka into the shape you want him to be in. You guys getting rid of him for AD, who you can't control his injuries. That's like, for me, that's not the best trade to happen. And I understand where you're coming from with the SGA and like general Thunder comparison. I have been hearing about that too. And I think that like, obviously as a Clippers fan, I'm tight. Obviously SGA went on to be what he is now. And he had potential when we had him too. But this is like, if SGA is the player he is now, if we had that then and then given that up for an injury prone Paul George, they're doing that with, they have current SGA. We had like a fledgling SGA who maybe turned into this, maybe didn't. There was no guarantee. And even then, I say we lost the trade. But they have current level SGA, potentially even better, giving them up for, let's say, Paul George. AD's better than Paul George, but like still injury prone, potentially even more injury prone than Paul George. And bringing him in, I just think it's this has the potential. Obviously, if they win something, then we're all like, okay, whatever, they won. But even if they get one ring, like, is that? I'm sure they'll say it is. I'm sure they'll be like, okay, this is the right move. But then if you go 5 years down the line and the Lakers build up around Luka, and then the Lakers are winning 2-3 rings with Luka as the best player in the league, obviously this is all hypothetical. But this has the potential to go down. We just have to see it play out. But as one of the worst trades ever, in my opinion.
I hear you. I like what you said about AD can't control his injuries. You can control Luka's conditioning. So I think that's super valid. And while we're on the topic of conditioning, you know, the headline came out that like Luka was pushing 270, 270 pounds. And that's
eating the table.
Looking up with Zion, bro.
Hey, I'm glad you said Zion, because honestly, I get all the jokes. It's funny. We can laugh at it. Anyone who is actually comparing Luka to Zion, like I've seen people legitimately mad at Luka for the weight gain. This is why I stay away from a lot of NBA media. This is why I stay away from a lot of Twitter when I can. That Twitter is my news source, but just staying out of the threads and the opinions and just the discourse, because people like to make those connections. And whoever's comparing Zion to Luka, man, I hope you stop talking basketball as soon as possible. I hope something happens to your cell service or whatever, man. Like, cause there's nothing that like gets me angry more than like people who just wanna hate on a player for no reason. And Luka, I think, deserves all the respect he has gotten. Yes, the conditioning is insane. Also, by the way, Dre, this isn't a jab at you. This isn't a jab at Alexi. I know you guys all mean it in good fun, and I don't think you guys are. You mentioned it, right? Like Luka took him to a chip, but there's people who legitimately are angry at the whole conditioning situation, and I understand that it's a problem and it's a concern. It's not a good look. But to compare it to Zion, that's crazy. So that's one thing I want to get out of the way. I'm not sure if y'all have any comments on just that part.
Yeah. With that, yeah. For me, Luka, 270, 720, a ton. I don't care, bro. Luka was in the finals last year. I'll take Luka, whatever form of Luka. Luka's already not the most athletic player in the league. Like, we're not expecting Luka to become some chiseled god who's out here hitting like a 50-inch vertical all of a sudden. Like, that's not even his game. So to me, like, the conditioning, obviously you want your player to get in as good a conditioning as possible, because then also bad conditioning could lead to injuries. But for me, that's not a valid reason to get rid of Luka. If there's some other behind the scenes stuff that we're not hearing about, that's different. But for the franchise to say, we're not feeling the conditioning, let's get him out of here. That's got to be sabotage to me.
I mean, the whole thing, though, even if there is some behind the scenes stuff going on, I still find it weird that, I mean, the players weren't aware of this. I mean, is that a norm for these trades? Like,
not at all.
For them to learn like the same day the rest of the world does at the same time?
Yeah, that's crazy. That is wild. And yeah, before I get to Lexi's comment, Dre, what you said is like, yes, I agree with that as well. People act like Shaq didn't dominate the league. Shaq was not the most in shape player,
Exactly.
period. You know, there's record that him and Kobe beefed over that. So, but they still brought chips to the city. So I don't understand the hate. I understand it's a concern. I think the concern was also he was becoming that Supermax extension was coming up, and it just looks like the Mavericks just didn't. The way I see it, they just didn't think he was worth the Supermax, given the conditioning issues. So I don't know. I obviously think that Luka deserved to have stayed on the Mavericks, but it's not what I think. At the end of the day, I thought it was also just such a storybook, like kind of script. You had Dirk do his time in Dallas. He was a lifelong Maverick from Europe. One of the first probably the first real European superstar. And towards the end of his tenure, towards the end of his career, you get the next big European star. I thought that was so, the script was so, that would be so fire, to have seen him play the whole career out. And he has spoken out and said he thought he was going to be a Maverick his entire career. So, crazy to see it turn out the way it did. But Alexi, in regards to your comment, yes, that the fact that he had no knowledge, the fact that AD had no knowledge is crazy. And I think, yes, we're living in an age, and that's actually something I wanted to talk about. We're living in an age where the players have all the power. We're obviously seeing the whole Jimmy Butler situation play out right now. And I think if you got to be Jimmy right now, you got to be upset because you have been very public about your frustration with the franchise. And since then, they have not moved a bit. And Luka has moved. AD has moved. De'Aaron Fox has moved. Zach LaVine has moved. A lot of, you got players who were in trade rumors, others who weren't in trade rumors who have been moved. So I just think that within itself is funny. But I just think it's owners at the end of the day, or maybe not owners, GMs, kind of just like bucking up and saying like, yo, we are the ones in charge. The players have had too much power. Maybe they're not. I'm not saying they're saying this straight up, but the GMs are being GMs. They're the ones that are pulling all the strings, calling the shots. You see Tim McMahon who's part of the administration within the Mavericks, part of the front office, speak out and say, hey, we were not comfortable with the conditioning. We were concerned about the conditioning. We think that we need a defensive-minded superstar in AD, and that's why they made that move. So you see him coming out and standing on, stand on 10 toes down, saying like, this is what we were doing and this is why we did it. Yeah, Luka's great. He didn't play any defense, so that's why we're moving on from him. Which I think, like, people can be mad at it all they want. I think that's kind of gangster, man. Like, you're standing on what you just did. You got the whole world mad at you. You got the whole media confused, the fan bases crucifying you, just publicly, just, coming at you crazy. And you're going to be like, yeah, like, this is why we did it. This is what we did. And we thought this was the best move. I honestly, even though I disagree with the move, I can see the logic and I got to respect it. So, yeah. Is it harsh that Luka, this is also something I want to clarify. Is it harsh that Luka and AD were not notified and were not aware and did not even make these requests themselves? Yes, 100%. I think I never wish this on anybody. I watch a lot of player podcasts and NBA player podcasts, and they speak on just how emotional and how hard it can be to move from one city to another, and how this can affect your mental health. So by no means am I saying like, hey, like this is what we need to do, this is what needs to happen. But there's a lot of people out there who are complaining about the ratings, who are complaining about the NBA. One of the biggest concerns has been the power that players have. And so to see something like this happen, where you got a top 5 player just get moved like that overnight, crazy. And I think it's the reason why it's entertaining, the reason why we're so drawn to it is because we haven't seen it. So I can't be mad at that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm not upset with him standing on business. I think once you make that decision, you should stand on it and say this is, because you're basically staking. If you're the person who decides we're moving Luka Doncic at 25 years old, you're staking your career as a general manager on this move. Because if this doesn't work out, you're done. Like, in my opinion, you're done for. So you got to come out and stand on it. There's no coming back from that. Like, you have to come out and say, okay, this is what we're doing. I believe in this move. And you just got to hope within the next year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, but that's pushing it with the Kyrie's age, AD's age. That's something that you win something. Because if you don't, you're done for. I can't see another. And the Mavericks generally are well-run organizations, but I can't see someone backing someone who made a move like this. It's just too much of a gamble, I think, for this league to give up, because one player can make so much of a difference in a game, to give up a top 5 player for a top 10 player. Obviously, one is a defensive-minded superstar, like you said, and one isn't. But also, if that's your goal to build this team, and I think maybe 5 years ago, putting Kyrie and AD together, that's a dream, like, little and big matchup. Like, that's actually a really cool matchup. Maybe 5 years ago. Even today, obviously, they're not washed or anything. They're still in their, like, towards the end of their primes. But if that's your goal, to have a setup like that, you could have had Luka and AD. I'm not saying they would have traded Kyrie for AD, but I'm saying you brought Kyrie to the Mavs. Even when that happened, everyone was saying, I'm not sure this is the best, like, matchup basketball wise. You proved us wrong. You got to the finals, and then now you're saying, Luka, we're not really, that's not really working out. Let's bring in AD. It just, to me, it's a whole roundabout way of getting rid of the best out of those 3 players. That's the part that doesn't make sense to me. If this was your goal to have a more defensive-minded superstar, because Kyrie tries, but, like, he isn't necessarily the best defender either. Obviously, it's a different mindset. Like, at least he's trying. Luka doesn't even really put in that much effort, in my opinion. But if this was your goal, then you should have been trying to bring someone in to play with Luka as a defensive-minded superstar to pair up with him. But now out of the 3 of those players, Luka right now is the best and is the youngest by at least 7 years, almost 8 years. Like, that, to me, that's where you fumbled the puzzle there.
Yeah, I get you with that. You know, you look around, and if you had told me literally Friday night, hey, Mavericks are about to make a blockbuster trade, they're trading a superstar, who are they getting rid of? I would, with 100% confidence, would have told you, oh, Kyrie's leaving. They're moving Kyrie. So, yes, to see Luka be the one to get moved is definitely, I did not expect it. But in that same breath, man, Mavericks right now are a 9 seed, right? They're right there. They're right there. So they're not too. I know saying the 9 seed sounds like they're out of contention. They're within striking distance of the 4 and 5 seed. They're just 4.5 games behind the 4 seed, the Nuggets. So they're right there. With this team, I think, is definitely now in the contention conversation, no question, because you got Kyrie, you got AD, you got Clay, you got Christie, you got Gafford, Lively. Like, you have such crazy depth where I'm like, man, like, this team is scary. I thought the Thunder was deep. I think this team is scary, and I'm glad as a Knicks fan that I don't have to run into, we don't have to run into this team unless, fingers crossed, we make it to the finals, right? Like, that's what I'm thinking, and I'm thinking, man, like, I think they can knock off an inexperienced Thunder. I think they can knock off the Cavs, and I think you put, say we have a rematch, Mavs Celtics in the finals. Listen, AD may give the Celtics a run for their money and push them over the top and get them that chip. So maybe it's recency bias, but I'm not counting out. Like, I don't want to fully say these are the championship favorites, but I think it's a toss up between them and the Celtics. So, like I said, is it a head scratcher? A little bit, but I'm seeing the vision, and I think we can see it materialize as early as this season. But only time will tell. Only time will tell. And the other thing I wanted to get to too within this trade, and I'm gonna wrap this up soon. We've been talking about it for a minute, but listen, man. I think you mentioned too. We were talking about the Clippers and the Thunder trade, right? In hindsight, right? If we look at that trade and we see how disastrous it's been, right? That's one example, right? Another example is you just look at the Lakers, right? You look at LeBron's tenure. I know you mentioned the Mickey Mouse ring. For the record, I don't consider it a Mickey Mouse ring, but I get I'm not mad at anyone for bringing up that narrative. Listen, I'm not gonna act like I'm the biggest LeBron fan because I'm not. So if people look back into LeBron's tenure with the Lakers, he's going out sad, man. He's playing well, but he has been playing with trash teams. So people may look at that one chip and still say, hey, that tenure was a little bit underwhelming. So I completely understand how someone can say one chip for the Mavs with this trade, not enough. So I understand it. We're seeing it right now with LeBron in LA, but like I said, man, only time will tell. It's scary. It's a scary time, but at the same time, it's exciting, man. Who doesn't love a good shakeup? But that's all I got to say on that. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I definitely agree about. I think LeBron's time with the Lakers has been underwhelming. We could have a whole topic on that too another day. But I'll just leave us with this as before we move on to the next topic. Let's just say Luka, the Mavs think, okay, we can make it work with him. We send him to the Lakers. LeBron retires 2 years, I'm sure. But even before then, now there's a reason why the best franchises in sports usually are the way they are, is because they're usually in these big markets. Obviously, you could have, say, Celtics are an anomaly in that sense, but even the New England market has its own value in every sport. But now Luka in LA, not only is Adam Silver frothing at the mouth, but other superstars might be frothing at the mouth to go play with Luka now. Maybe they wanted to play with Luka before, but they're like, Dallas, like, okay, that's cool. Although in Texas, you get way more of your money than you would in California. But I think living in LA, that's just a big plus for a lot of these guys. And we could see players who may want to play with Luka, but they're like, Dallas wasn't the spot. They're like, okay, LA is the spot. And we could see in 5 years a stacked Lakers team that we wouldn't have seen in Dallas. And then all of a sudden, Dallas was like, damn, Luka wasn't the problem. We were the problem. And the breaks. But we'll see. Only time will tell, like you said.
Yeah, which would be sad, man. I'm like I said, man. Knicks. I don't want to bring every conversation back to the Knicks, but because we are currently in contention and we're seeing the way things are unfolding, I love the team we have right now. But listen, man, I wouldn't be mad now that the big stars want to, are going. You have a Luka going to in LA, man. I'd be lying if I said, man, I wouldn't want a Giannis to make his way to New York. But just insert any other superstar name. But that's a whole different conversation. I'm just picking on Giannis because I've always been skeptical about the Bucks and how they're going to turn out. But that's again another topic for another day. But yeah, man, it's scary times we're living in, but definitely new beginnings. We'll have to wait and see, and we'll see how the season plays out, and maybe we revisit this in the future, and we'll have different thoughts. But as of right now, that's what we're thinking.